Imagine going days without food. Hunger gnaws at your stomach, winter is approaching, and your only hope lies in the icy waters of the river. But how do you catch fish without metal hooks, without modern nets, without anything except what nature provides? Today, you'll discover how our ancestors mastered the art of primitive fishing and ensured their survival with incredible techniques that shaped human history. Picture yourself 10,000 years ago, standing at the edge of a rushing river. Your family is hungry, the game has migrated away, the wild berries are long gone. The only source of protein swims beneath the rippling surface before you. Your survival, and the survival of your entire tribe, depends on your ability to outsmart creatures perfectly adapted to an environment where humans don't belong. This wasn't just a challenge our ancestors faced occasionally. For many ancient communities, from the nomadic peoples of northern Europe to the early inhabitants of coastal Japan, fishing wasn't a hobby. It was the difference between life and death. These early humans didn't have the luxury of fishing supply stores or YouTube tutorials. They had to observe, experiment, and pass down knowledge through generations. Some of these techniques were so effective that they remained virtually unchanged for thousands of years, and certain indigenous communities still practice them today. If you love history and want to uncover the secrets of prehistoric survival, like this video, subscribe to the Dawn of Humankind channel, and don't miss a single episode of our journey through humanity's most ingenious solutions to life's greatest challenges. Fishing is perhaps one of humanity's oldest survival skills, dating back tens of thousands of years. Archaeological evidence suggests our ancestors were catching fish as early as 40,000 years ago, long before written language or permanent settlements. Imagine standing on the shores of ancient lakes and rivers, watching as fish swim tantalizingly close, but just out of reach. How would you capture them without modern technology? This was the challenge our ancestors faced every day. What makes early fishing truly remarkable is the ingenuity born from necessity. Without metal hooks, nylon lines, or manufactured nets, early humans turned to nature itself for solutions. Tribes in coastal Japan crafted hooks from animal bones, sharpening them to perfection through hours of patient work. In what is now northern Europe, ancient peoples wove intricate traps from flexible willow branches and plant fibers, some so well designed they're still used by traditional communities today. Each environment demanded different approaches. In tropical regions, indigenous peoples discovered that certain crushed plants could temporarily stun fish, making them float to the surface for easy collection. In Arctic climates, early humans carved precise holes in ice and developed specialized spears for striking fish in frigid waters. What's fascinating is how these techniques weren't just invented once and spread. They evolved independently across continents. The Aboriginal peoples of Australia, the native tribes of North America, and ancient communities in Africa all developed remarkably similar fishing methods despite having no contact with each other. It speaks to the universal human capacity for problem-solving when survival is at stake. And these weren't just individual pursuits. Fishing became one of humanity's first communal activities. Entire communities would participate in fish drives, where dozens of people would form human chains in shallow waters, herding fish toward waiting traps. These collective efforts not only filled bellies, but strengthened social bonds that helped early human groups survive and thrive. The legacy of these ancient innovations surrounds us today. The basic hook and line method hasn't fundamentally changed in thousands of years, just the materials. Many traditional fishing communities around the world still use techniques passed down through countless generations, preserving this ancient knowledge. So, let's dive deeper into this world of primitive fishing, a world where human creativity and determination transformed simple materials into tools that helped our species survive and spread across the planet. The story of the fishing hook is a testament to human ingenuity. Long before metalworking was even imagined, our ancestors crafted fishing hooks from materials they found in their environment. These weren't crude tools hastily put together. They were masterpieces of primitive engineering. Imagine walking along a beach 12,000 years ago. You spot a fish swimming in the shallows, but how do you catch it? Early humans asked this same question and found brilliant answers. They discovered that a carefully shaped piece of bone could be the difference between feast and famine. The earliest hooks weren't curved like those we use today. They were straight gorge hooks, small, pointed pieces of bone, shell, or wood that were baited and swallowed by fish. When the fishing line was pulled, the gorge would turn sideways in the fish's throat, effectively trapping it. It's a design so clever that it predates modern hooks by thousands of years. As time passed, our ancestors perfected the curved hook design we'd recognize today. Archaeological discoveries have unearthed hooks made from bird bones, deer antlers, seashells, and even thorns from certain plants. Each material required different techniques to shape and sharpen, showing just how adaptable early humans were. The Ainu people of Japan, one of the world's oldest indigenous cultures, developed fishing hook techniques that astonish researchers to this day. They crafted composite hooks, multiple materials bound together with natural fibers, creating tools perfectly suited to the specific fish species in their waters. These weren't random attempts. They were designed with deep knowledge of both materials and prey. What's truly remarkable is that some prehistoric hooks were actually more effective than early metal ones. Without the constraint of having to forge metal, ancient craftspeople could design hooks in sizes and shapes that perfectly matched their target fish. Some shell hooks discovered in the Pacific Islands could catch massive fish that would snap the metal hooks used by European sailors who first encountered these islands. The creation of these hooks wasn't just practical, it was often spiritual. Many fishing cultures performed rituals when crafting hooks, believing that imbuing them with spiritual power would attract more fish. Some hooks found by archaeologists show intricate carvings and designs that serve no practical purpose, but may have held deep cultural significance. The knowledge behind hook making was precious, passed down through generations as carefully as any treasure. Children would watch elders select the perfect bone, shape it with stone tools, and test its strength. This wasn't just learning a skill, it was inheriting the wisdom that kept communities alive for thousands of years. Even today, in a world of mass-produced metal hooks, some traditional communities still craft hooks from natural materials, preserving techniques that have survived millennia. These aren't just historical curiosities. They're living connections to our distant past and reminders of the incredible innovation that shaped human survival. When it comes to feeding an entire community, hooks alone weren't always enough. This is where the true engineering genius of our ancestors really shines. In the creation of nets and traps that could capture dozens or even hundreds of fish at once. Imagine standing by a river 7,000 years ago, watching as the seasonal fish migration begins. One hook might catch one fish, but how do you feed 50 people? The answer came in the form of intricately woven nets and ingeniously designed traps. Creating a fishing net in ancient times was no small feat. Without modern materials, our ancestors turned to what nature provided. Plant fibers from trees, vines, and grasses. These fibers had to be harvested at just the right time, dried carefully, and then painstakingly twisted into strong, flexible cordage. A single net might require miles of this handmade cord, representing weeks or even months of dedicated work. The knowledge of which plants made the best fibers was crucial. Some communities used the inner bark of willow or cedar trees. Others found that certain grasses, when properly processed, created incredibly strong lines that wouldn't snap even with the weight of many fish. In tropical regions, coconut fibers proved remarkably resistant to water damage, creating nets that could last for years. But perhaps the most fascinating fishing technology came from the indigenous peoples of the Amazon rainforest. These master engineers developed a system called PARI, an elaborate combination of barriers and traps that transformed entire sections of rivers into fish collection systems. Using thousands of precisely placed wooden poles and woven palm fronds, they would construct V-shaped barriers across rivers, channeling fish toward basket traps positioned at strategic points. What makes these Amazonian systems truly remarkable is their sustainability. They were designed to catch adult fish while allowing smaller, younger fish to slip through and continue reproducing. This wasn't just clever engineering, it was also sophisticated ecological management that ensured fish populations would remain healthy for future generations. In other parts of the world, communities developed basket traps of stunning complexity. The basic design was ingenious, a funnel-shaped entrance that was easy for fish to swim into but nearly impossible to find their way out of. Some of these traps included multiple chambers, allowing them to catch different species or sizes of fish simultaneously. One fascinating example comes from ancient Egypt, where wall paintings dating back 4,000 years show specialized trap designs that were perfectly adapted to the annual Nile River flooding. These traps would be set as the floodwaters receded, capturing fish that had come to feed in the newly inundated plains. Stone traps represent perhaps the most permanent fishing technology of our ancestors. Along coastlines from Scotland to Japan, archaeologists have discovered carefully arranged stone walls that created tidal fish traps. These structures, some still visible today, would trap fish as the tide went out, making collection as simple as walking along the exposed seabed and picking up stranded fish. What's truly remarkable about these ancient nets and traps is that many of these designs are still used today, virtually unchanged after thousands of years. This isn't because we've failed to innovate, it's because our ancestors already perfected these technologies through countless generations of trial and error. When something works that well, there's simply no need to change it. Fishing alone might feed your family for a day, but fishing together could feed an entire community for weeks. This simple realization led to some of the most impressive fishing techniques ever developed, methods that transformed groups of humans into the most efficient predators rivers and coastlines had ever seen. Collective fishing wasn't just about catching more fish. It was about creating systems that were far greater than the sum of their parts. Imagine 50 or 60 people working in perfect harmony, each performing a specific role in a complex operation that would be impossible for any individual to accomplish. The Maori people of New Zealand perfected this approach with a technique called hau, a fishing method that demonstrates just how sophisticated these collective strategies could be. During spawning seasons, when fish gathered in massive schools, Maori fishermen would organize themselves into human chains. Some would wade into the water, forming living barriers to guide fish toward the shallows. Others would position themselves with nets, while scouts would signal the location and movement of the schools. It was a choreographed performance that required perfect communication and timing. What makes these collective methods even more remarkable is that they often crossed tribal boundaries. Ancient fishing festivals would bring together communities that might otherwise compete or even conflict with each other. For a few precious days or weeks, when fish were abundant, these groups would set aside differences and work together. Archaeological evidence suggests that some of these fishing festivals date back at least 10,000 years, making them among the oldest examples of inter-community cooperation in human history. In the Pacific Northwest of North America, indigenous peoples including the Salish and Haida would construct massive wooden weirs, fence-like structures, across rivers during salmon runs. These weren't built by individuals or even single families. They required the coordinated effort of dozens or even hundreds of community members. Some were engineering marvels designed with underwater channels and collection areas that could be opened and closed as needed. The timing of these operations was crucial and based on generations of careful observation. Communities tracked lunar cycles, water temperatures, and even the behavior of certain birds and animals to predict exactly when fish would be most abundant. This wasn't just fishing, it was an early form of science, passed down through oral tradition and refined over thousands of years. One fascinating aspect of collective fishing was how it influenced social structures. Many communities developed specific roles and responsibilities around these activities. In ancient Hawaiian society, certain families were designated as net makers, others as canoe builders, and others as fish spotters. These specialized roles were hereditary, passed down through generations, creating a web of interdependence that strengthened social bonds. Perhaps the most impressive example comes from ancient China, where written records from over 2,000 years ago describe elaborate fishing operations involving hundreds of boats working in coordination. These weren't random groupings. They were carefully organized flotillas, each vessel with a specific position and role. Some would drive fish toward waiting nets, others would deploy the nets, and still others would collect and preserve the catch. The legacy of these collective fishing methods continues today in many traditional communities, though modern technology has often replaced the need for such large-scale human coordination. Yet in some places, you can still witness these ancient techniques in action, living connections to our cooperative past, and reminders that humans have always accomplished their greatest feats, not as individuals, but as communities working together. Did you know that some ancient tribes used plant poisons to stun fish, making them float to the surface for easy collection? These natural compounds would temporarily immobilize the fish without making them unsafe to eat, an incredible technique still used in some remote parts of the Amazon today. If you're enjoying this journey through primitive fishing techniques, make sure to hit that like button and share this video with a friend who'd appreciate this fascinating history. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more videos exploring humanity's ingenious survival skills. I'm curious, which of these fishing techniques do you find most impressive? Drop a comment below and let me know. Is it the handcrafted bone hooks, the intricate traps and nets, or these massive communal fishing operations? I read every comment and can't wait to hear your thoughts. Fishing isn't just about hooks and nets, it's about psychology. Understanding what attracts fish, what makes them strike, and how to approach without being detected. Our ancestors were master psychologists when it came to outsmarting their aquatic prey. Without bait shops or catalogues of fishing lures, early humans had to become keen observers of fish behavior. They noticed which insects fish would jump for, which fruits they'd snap at when they fell into the water, and which small creatures made up their natural diet. This wasn't casual observation. It was survival research conducted over thousands of generations. In tropical regions, many indigenous fishers discovered that certain bright berries were irresistible to specific fish species. They would carefully thread these berries onto hooks made from bone or wood, creating lures that were as effective as anything we use today. Some communities in what is now Southeast Asia would collect grasshoppers and cicadas during summer months, not just for immediate use, but to dry and preserve them for fishing during seasons when insects were scarce. Perhaps the most fascinating bait technique comes from Arctic peoples who would carve intricate lures from bone and ivory. These weren't just hooks, they were works of art designed to mimic small fish in both appearance and movement. Archaeologists have recovered lures from sites more than 4,000 years old that feature incredible detail, including etched scales and inlaid materials to catch the light underwater. When pulled through ice holes with a rhythmic motion, these lures would attract large predatory fish even in the dark waters beneath frozen lakes. But sometimes, the best approach wasn't to attract fish with bait, but to become the predator directly. This is where the art of camouflage and mimicry enters primitive fishing. In shallow coastal waters and clear rivers, some of the most effective fishing techniques involved becoming part of the environment. The indigenous peoples of the Andaman Islands in the Indian Ocean developed a fishing method so ingenious that it's still practiced today. These skilled fishers would observe diving birds like kingfishers and herons, noting exactly how they moved, how they positioned their bodies, and how they struck at fish. Then they would enter the water themselves, mimicking these movements with uncanny precision. Fish, accustomed to the presence of these birds and not recognizing the human disguise, would come within arm's reach, allowing for a quick grab or spear strike. In North America, native fishers would use what we now call stalking techniques when fishing clear streams. They would approach from downstream, staying low and moving slowly to avoid casting shadows. Some would cover their bodies with mud or clay to reduce their visibility and even their scent. These weren't just hunting tactics, they were based on deep understanding of fish sensory perception, gained through careful observation and passed down through generations. Some of the most effective primitive fishing involved mimicking the sounds of wounded prey fish to attract predators. Fishers in ancient Polynesia would slap the water in specific patterns that imitated the splashing of injured fish, drawing larger predators close enough to spear. This technique required not just skill, but perfect timing and patience, waiting motionless for long periods before executing the perfect mimicry. What makes these primitive baiting and camouflage techniques truly remarkable is that many of them work just as well today as they did thousands of years ago. Fish haven't fundamentally changed their behavior, and the principles our ancestors discovered through necessity still apply. In fact, many modern fishing lures are simply high-tech versions of designs that indigenous peoples developed millennia ago. The next time you see an expensive fishing lure in a sporting goods store, remember this: behind that modern design lies the ancient wisdom of countless generations of human fishers who learned to think like the fish they hunted. Their ingenuity wasn't just clever, it was the difference between feast and famine, between survival and starvation. As we've journeyed through the ingenious world of primitive fishing, one thing becomes crystal clear. These weren't just techniques for catching food. They were the foundations upon which human civilization was built. Fishing provided not only sustenance, but stability, allowing our ancestors to settle in one place long enough to develop culture, art, and eventually civilization itself. The story of primitive fishing is ultimately a story about human potential. With nothing but their minds, their hands, and materials from the natural world, our ancestors created sophisticated systems that could reliably feed entire communities. They didn't have engineering degrees or scientific journals. They had observation, creativity, and the wisdom accumulated through thousands of generations of trial and error. These fishing techniques reveal something profound about our species. They show how humans have always been problem solvers, always been innovators. When faced with hungry children and the vast mystery of water-dwelling creatures, our ancestors didn't give up. They experimented, collaborated, and persevered until they mastered their environment. Perhaps most remarkably, many of these ancient fishing methods created a sustainable relationship with nature. Fish traps that allowed young fish to escape, harvesting seasons timed with natural cycles, and community rules about not taking too much. These weren't just practical measures. They were early conservation efforts that ensured fish populations would remain healthy for future generations. The knowledge behind these fishing techniques represents one of humanity's greatest achievements, a body of wisdom accumulated over tens of thousands of years, passed down through generations and refined through constant practice. In many ways, it's sad that much of this knowledge has been lost in our modern world. Tribal elders who once knew exactly how to craft the perfect hook or position a fish trap are passing away, often without apprentices to continue their traditions. But there's hope too. Around the world, there's growing interest in preserving and documenting these ancient techniques. Indigenous communities are creating schools and programs to ensure young people learn their traditional fishing methods. Archaeologists and anthropologists are working with tribal elders to record and understand these practices before they're lost forever. The next time you see someone fishing, whether with a modern rod and reel or a traditional net, remember that you're witnessing the modern expression of one of humanity's oldest and most important relationships. The dance between humans and fish has shaped our species, our diets, our settlements, and even our myths and religions for thousands of generations. Without these ingenious fishing techniques, who knows if humanity would have survived and thrived as we have. So much of who we are today, our capacity for teamwork, our problem-solving abilities, our relationship with nature, was shaped by these early fishing practices. In many ways, when we look at primitive fishing techniques, we're looking at the origins of humanity itself. Thank you for joining me on this journey through one of humanity's oldest skills. If you enjoyed this glimpse into our ancient past, please hit that like button and share this video with someone who appreciates human ingenuity. Subscribe to The Dawn of Humankind for more fascinating stories about prehistoric innovations that shaped our world. Drop a comment below telling me which primitive fishing technique you found most impressive, or what ancient technology you'd like to see covered in our next video. Until next time, remember that the wisdom of our ancestors still has much to teach us about survival, sustainability, and working together.